Hey everyone, Robert here, author of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life. Are you ready to start living your life to the fullest? Are you ready and willing to transform yourself and your life from ordinary to extraordinary? Let's get to it, my friends. Welcome to the Fully Engaged Life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. In today's episode, I'm going to address something that I hope is extremely helpful for all of you, regardless of whether you're just starting out with meditation or whether you're an advanced practitioner. In order to begin, I would like to just clarify the difference between a meditative practice and meditation. Remember that a meditative practice is something you are doing. You are working on something, you're concentrating, you're focusing on breathing, you're doing something. And in meditation itself, you are doing nothing. You are just trying to sit and be still and allow the mind to settle on its own. You're not trying to make it do anything. You're not trying not to think or anything like that. You're just allowing it to naturally come to settle into a point of silence and stillness all on its own. So a meditative practice is doing something, and meditation itself is not doing anything. It's important to grasp this difference before we get started, because in the West, anything we do where we're working with the mind, any meditative practice has been grouped into the buzzword of meditation. But there's an incredible distinction there that we must be aware of. So today I'm going to be focusing on meditation itself. And meditation, even though you're doing nothing or you're not doing anything, can be very challenging. The mind is used to all of the activities and distractions and forms of emotional entertainment, the never-ending busyness of these thought processes going around in your head, and not to mention all of the subconscious mental processes that we are unconscious of. So the mind is always overloaded with activity. So to allow that to settle and come down to a point of no activity can be incredibly challenging. It's interesting that in spirituality, some of the simplest practices are the most difficult. And it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or an advanced practitioner of meditation, because even if you have been meditating for years or even decades, you still find yourself having days where meditation is difficult. It's just not happening on a particular day. You should know that that is completely natural. We can accept the fact that there will most likely be days where meditating is difficult, especially in our current environment. I mean, look around the world, all of the fear that is being pushed right now. And when your mind is living in fear, it's racing even faster than usual. There's more mental activity going on. Your nerves are on edge. It's difficult to focus. It's difficult to make decisions. In that environment, it's very difficult to successfully meditate. It's much easier if you're tucked away in a monastery somewhere where you don't have to interact with the outside world much, and you get to be removed from all of the chaos in the outside world. However, most of us have jobs, and we have to interact with the world around us, and that can make things much more challenging when it comes to meditation. However, It is in times like these that meditation becomes an even more critical practice. It is more important than ever that we engage in meditation. And one of the reasons why is because it helps us protect our mental health. And when we are living in times where fear is being pushed upon the people of the world from so many different directions, this can become an issue. This is why I think it was the month of June or July, they saw a 70% increase in suicide attempts in many hospitals. That is simply a staggering number. So with everything going on, I still hold firm when I share with you that meditation should be a daily practice, as well as some sort of movement practice, like Tai Chi or Qigong or something like that. You need those practices in place right now to help protect your mental and physical well-being. So what happens if we grab our zafu and we're sitting to begin a meditation and we run into a day where meditation is just really difficult? Or as you sit for several minutes, 15, 20 minutes, you start to realize it's just not going to happen today. The first thing you want to do is to acknowledge it and to accept it. The worst thing you can try and do is force it, because this will just create a mental block that will prevent you from being successful with it anyway. You don't want to force it, and you don't want to become frustrated with yourself. These are two things that will cause your defeat, not only in this session of sitting, but in future sessions as well. So this is the first hurdle to overcome. Then, upon realizing that maybe it's just a day where it's not conducive for you to meditate, you can shift the focus from meditation to a meditative practice. As an example, you may go to the meditative practice of rooting yourself in your seated position, bringing the energy down from your head down into your center, or even all the way down into the ground beneath you, in order to help your mind to settle. And if you are capable of engaging a practice like that for a while, then you will be in a better state in which to meditate tomorrow. See, so go into a meditative practice. And one of the benefits is this. If your thoughts are scattered, they just won't settle. Everything's all swirled up that day and you're on edge a little bit. Going into a meditative practice will take you from your mind swirling with 10,000 things down to a single point of concentration. So this is helping your mind to settle. It's not going into stillness. It's not silence, because you're engaged in actively doing something. However, it is still a tremendous relief from all of those 10,000 wild thoughts and emotions and things going on. So the benefit of just naturally shifting into a meditative practice can be extremely helpful. And not to mention, you get the benefit of engaging the practice itself. In this way, it's a win-win. And I've found from my own personal experience that it's far better to do that than to just give up. Because a lot of times you become defeated and then you may not even go back to it, or you may always associate the practice with being defeated. But if you just shift naturally into a different type of practice and engage that, get the benefits of that, then you can benefit yourself. Even if you go into a simple, yet very important and productive meditative practice, such as focusing on your breath or diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing, This is all beneficial. This is very helpful. And if you're more advanced, you can shift into a more advanced meditative practice. The key is to try to keep your vibrational frequency high. And you do this by not allowing yourself to become impatient, to set unrealistic expectations, such as I should be able to do this perfectly every day, because that's just not realistic for anyone. Avoid frustration and forcing what you're trying to do, those sorts of things. Those bring your vibration down. If you can keep your vibration up and just acknowledge what's happening and shift into another practice that will allow you to gain some benefit, then you're doing just fine. Now, it's important here that I stress this little caveat. What I'm referring to is for people who have been meditating a little bit. You can be a beginner or advanced, but you need to be aware that if you're just starting out and you're finding meditation difficult, you should not be quick to shift into a meditative practice. Okay, so the idea is, if I'm just starting out and I'm trying to do meditation, it takes time for the mind to settle. It can take days, weeks, months, years for the mind to actually settle. And the idea is, as you practice, it'll settle a little more and a little more and a little more. But this requires great consistency and time. However, if you've been involved in meditation and you can successfully meditate for 30 to 60 minutes, no problem, that's still a beginner. But then it's okay if you run into a day where, okay, this is just not working. My head is just too busy and it's not going to calm down for me today. Then I'll go into a meditative practice to bring it down to a single point. That's absolutely fine. The same holds true for the most experienced of meditators, because this is just a natural occurrence. It's going to happen. We have rhythms and we have energy frequency shifts in the field around us. We have all these things that can affect us and change day to day. So we have to learn to roll with the punches a little bit there. However, if we are too much of a beginner, in other words, you haven't been able to go into deep meditation for 40 to 60 minutes minimum on a regular basis, then you should still just try and sit and allow the mind to settle as much as it's going to settle. Another thing I would recommend if you're finding meditation difficult is to use the breath bridge. I sold this program on my website for a couple of years, and it is no longer available. However, an all new and expanded version of that will be available in the Breathing Mastery audio program series that I'm developing and releasing very soon. This helps you to go from the outer to the inner, from the external world to your inner world, through using the senses and sealing them off temporarily in order to help minimize distractions. And it helps you to get a little deeper into the mind. So if you're struggling to get your mind to settle and become still, you can always use the breath bridge, which is a meditative practice, in order to help you go inside and go into meditation from there. So this is another way that you could use a meditative practice to then turn around and go into meditation and see if that helps. This is a rather powerful practice, and it allows you to go a little more directly and deeply into the mind, which then you can allow the mind to settle and become still. Isn't it interesting that doing nothing can be so incredibly challenging? And this is one of the greatest problems that humanity is facing right now. We're very good at doing nothing physically. sitting around, lying around, staring at screens and so forth, basically doing nothing because the body is completely inactive. Yet, our mind is buzzing with activity, conscious activity, unconscious mental processes, all of this activity taking place. We got emotions rising and falling one after another, thoughts bombarding our mind. It just doesn't end. And this is when a human being is completely out of balance. When the physical is totally inactive and the mind is hyperactive, that is the recipe for disaster. In order to bring the mind and body into harmony, back into balance, it's important to do a few things. One, get up and move. This is why I say to do a Tai Chi form, a Qigong form, something. Even go for a walk, some sort of physical activity. And what we want is stillness in movement. What that means, at least in this context, is that your body is moving and the mind becomes still. So you have some physical movement and the mind comes to rest. And then in order to balance that, that is when we sit in stillness and we engage in movement, mental movement, through a meditative practice. See how that creates a balance? Sort of like a yin and yang. And then once we have that capability, it is then that we take both the body and mind into a point of stillness so that the physical body is still, the mind's activity is still, and the mind is completely silent. There's no thought, no intention, no unconscious processes taking place in the subconscious mind. Everything is suspended and you have complete stillness. So remember, when the body is inactive, doing nothing, no form of exercise, no forms of movement, just basically sitting around or lying around, our physical health is greatly and negatively impacted. We become very unhealthy. The body becomes weak, lethargic, and open for various forms of injury and illness. The body was made to move. It needs to move. We have to have some kind of physical movement practices that we engage in on a regular basis. The mind is just the opposite. When the mind is overactive, really active, that is when we become more mentally unhealthy. When we bring the mind to a point of stillness and silence, that is when the mind is extremely healthy, because it is then that we start to transcend the mind. We go beyond the mind and we touch our consciousness. And we simply cannot connect to that consciousness while the mind is active, let alone hyperactive. So the first thing is to become aware of this, whether my body is active enough or not, whether my mind is too active or not, and then we can adjust our practices accordingly, because all of this has to fit each individual and their individual situation. And once you begin to meditate sufficiently, you will know, because when you are finished, you'll feel a great sense of relief, like just a weight's been lifted from your mind, because it gives you a break. You can come back and have everything turned back on and be busy again if you desire, or you can learn to keep that calm and a degree of stillness to where the mind just flows naturally and easily instead of being incredibly rampant with thoughts and emotions. So while meditation may not be the easiest thing to do in the world, I think it is one of the most beneficial practices that has ever existed for humanity. And I do not make that statement lightly. So if you are working on meditation and you find you have a difficult day from time to time, don't be discouraged. There's no need. Understand that it's natural. It's perfectly okay. We are all going to have those moments. So I hope this helps you understand meditation a little bit better, and also that it serves you by allowing you to be more productive with your meditation. Authentic meditation can be a very confusing topic. And once you engage in meditation, the confusion can increase because you're not sure what you should or shouldn't do, or if you're doing things correctly. So I hope this helps clarify a lot of that for you and allows you to engage your practice more confidently. And in between meditation times, make sure that you stop by www.expansionmastery.com. Grab your autographed copy of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life, as well as some of the other goodies. You can read some articles and all kinds of things there. Please check out the website and help us out by subscribing and liking and commenting and sharing all of the social media stuff that we do. You are always greatly appreciated for doing so. Until next time, my friends, I wish you the very best in your practices and your life. Take care.